AskReddit. What's the most obscene display of private wealth you've ever witnessed? I work for a wealthy man and he once had me fly on a private jet to the other side of the country to pick up 6 perfect heirloom strawberries that cost $100 per 6 pack. They were placed in Chinese silk hand molded box, so each strawberry wouldn't be jostled during the trip. He ate 3, gave me the rest for my trouble. Not gonna lie, it was the most amazing strawberry experience I have ever had. They probably cost him $25k all said and done between flights and my wage. Edit. Here are some of the answers to all of your questions. How did I get the job? It just sort of happened. Was teaching the kids ski lessons, started working as a nanny, transitioned into personal assistant role, given title director of fun by family. Do I make enough money? I only work 4 months a year and travel 8 months, so yes. Was the family nice? Super awesome family, really nice, slightly out of touch with reality. Once won a VIP ticket for an Oscar nightclub. Don't ask. Saw 3 kids test their 100k watches for waterproofness by emptying $4,000 bottles of champagne over them. One of the watches wasn't. They found that fact very funny. I had a client who bought a $175,000 watch for his 17-year-old son as a graduation present. Son didn't want it, so he gave it to his other son who was 10 years old. A different client went into our store with his mistress to buy his wife a $50,000 bag. Mistress wanted one too. Said no and told her she's only allowed the $8,000 bag. Classic pimp daddy ideals. Make sure the mistress knows below the wife. My boss once had me drive him to an exotic car dealership to pick up his new Bentley 3 days after my paycheck had bounced. I had an obscenely wealthy kid in my graduating class. His parents bought him a brand new Range Rover on his 16th birthday and he crashed it into a school bus. They got him a new one and he crashed it road racing. They got him a new one and he got a DUI and finally the police took away his license. Thank the Lord. I met the CEO of the company I work for and I complimented his watch. The first thing he did is take it off a day, let me wear it. Come to find out, after doing a little research, the watch he was wearing is a Patek Philippe that cost $1.75 million. That watch alone cost more than every asset in my family for the past 4 generations. I work in a shoe store. I once had a customer walk in and say give me 1 pair of every men's shoe in a size 10. Didn't want to try them on or look at them. He just needed some shoes for each of his houses. I work on commission, so it was a huge sale for me. But holy duck. That was about 140 pairs of shoes. I would like to imagine this building the last few times this dude went to the lake house and had no shoes. Went to the cabin, no ducking shoes. Out to the summer home, and goddammit, he only wore flip-flops out there. Where are the son of a beach shoes? Goes to shoe store, and in a fit of shoe-induced rage, buys a lifetime supply of shoes. I work for a luxury home builder. Very big, very expensive houses. We are building a home for this guy and he calls freaking out at me because AT&T would only provide him with 9 DVRs when he needs 11. They would provide him with more, but he would need to open a second account to do so. I don't know why. I guess they had some kind of weird limit at the time. I'm the CTO of the home builder, so he expected me to get AT&T to change this policy so he could have a TV with DVR in every bathroom as well as the normal TV viewing rooms. I obviously couldn't do this, so he cancelled his contract with us through his lawyer and never spoke to us again. His deposit was non-refundable. In fact, we had already spent most of the money on the initial part of the build. So he walked away from over $100,000 we wouldn't give him back without ever saying a word to us. It was no biggie to him, I guess. It also made no sense. A party at the CEO's house for Halloween. Insanity. I thought I was going to get kicked out of the neighborhood because I was only driving a 30k car, not a 300k car. Anything you can think of, he had at this party. Staff with signature cocktails at the door, a fully staffed bar for liquor, a fully staffed bar for wine, an entire table made of ice with ice shot glasses and 10 different vodkas. He was wearing a costume made of leather that his wife commissioned for him, handmade in France. The 400-yard bridge to his private lake was strung up with extra lights, and the dock had a separate bar for those who wanted to sit on the lake. At least he was sharing the fun. Sounds insane and fun. My hometown of Hobart is a working class city right at the end of the world in Tasmania, where nothing much ever happens. In the past not many people came here, except a few hikers / outdoors people, to admire the natural beauty of the place, but nothing else was really going for the town. A guy who made hundreds of millions of dollars gambling opened his own private $150 million art museum, and has turned the city into a major tourist drawbird. Best of all, locals are allowed in for free whenever they like, and free parties / festivals are thrown year round. In under 5 years he single-handedly transformed the entire city. My boss was a military liaison in Dubai and told me a story about a guy he became friends with there. One night they are driving back from a night of debauchery in this guy's brand new Ferrari and it breaks down. He pulls over to the side of the road, gets out, and starts walking while calling his people to come get him / bring him another car. He doesn't mention anything about the broken Ferrari, so my boss asks him about it. His response was, "What about it? It's broken. I'll just buy another." People have stupid amounts of money in Dubai. I went to a birthday party in 3rd grade. Every girl in the 3rd grade was invited. So 80 girls were picked up in limos, taken to Build-A-Bear, where we could choose any bear. Then we all got manicures and pedicures. We went to Red Robin for dinner and limoed back to her mansion for a sleepover. I will never attend a party that fancy ever again. I live in oil country and my daughter had a similar experience going to a birthday party in kindergarten. The little girl's family had rented a dance studio, had bathrobes made for each little girl with their names embroidered on it, sleep masks, slippers and a spa bag consisting of a bunch of nail polishes and bath bombs. The candy bar was at least 20 feet long. Estheticians were hired to provide a spa experience for 25 little girls and the parents were given bottles of wine as treat bags for mommies as we came to pick up our kids. My daughter's party at the arcade with pizza looked ghetto in comparison. Lol. I was helping an owner rent his apartment, which is an investment property. It's a 2,500 square foot condo with 4 balconies and 360-degree views of Midtown Eastern Manhattan, asking for $15,000 a month. Rented it for 6 months upfront with option to renew to someone who has ties to oil families in the Middle East. The person never moved in. My husband wrote a movie, long story, with a friend of his who is a full-time writer in Hollywood. Friend went to the house of a famous producer to pitch their script. He called my husband and said, "They have a Picasso." Husband is like, "Wow, very cool." Friend says, "The Picasso is in their parking garage." Guy from my town bought a helicopter. He had fallen out with his neighbor, so decided to call his pilot at 4 AM and hover over his neighbor's house all night to annoy him. Lived in the international dorms in college. First week of school move-in happens, and you get to meet a bunch of people. One of the people I met was this girl from Singapore. She's pretty cool and whatnot, but after a few weeks she realizes that to get around she needs a car, as public transport blows. So, naturally, she calls her parents to tell them that she needs a car. No biggie. She tells them that she needs a Mercedes S-Class. HM. Okay. Nice. But remember, she's from Singapore. If you know anything about Singapore, it's that cars cost anywhere from 6 to 9 times what they do in the US. Casually, her parents wire her enough money to get an S-Class in Singapore. Girl gets $650,000 wired to her account, not knowing that it costs 6 times less here. She goes to the dealership, then comes back in an hour with no car. I asked her what happened, and she says, "Oh, it's getting delivered." Sure enough, 2 days later a brand new car shows up, except it's no S-Class. It's a Lamborghini Murcielago. Touche, well played. I later find out she doesn't know how to drive, so she hired a chauffeur to drive her around. She would sit in the passenger side of her own Lambo and be driven places. What made it more hilarious was that the chauffeur would actually wear a black jacket and hat. I went to Chipotle with a friend and they willingly paid for us both to get guacamole. saw a news article that an extremely wealthy Chinese man's son bought 8 iPhone 7s for his dog. In summer of 1988 I was 16 and I went on a family trip to visit relatives in Cali, Colombia. One night, they took us on a drive around town to see the city at night. On the tour, we passed a 6 or 7 story office tower under construction in a residential neighborhood that my cousin told me was to be the future home of one of the city's largest narco-traffickants or drug kingpins. While the house was under construction, he'd had another large mansion built directly across the street so he could keep an eye on the building's progress from his home. Essentially, he built a mansion to live in while he watched his bigger mansion being built. During college I worked at a place selling very high-end patio furniture in the richest DC suburb. One day a Washington Redskin comes in and buys a custom patio furniture set for his deck and pool area. Total cost for 10 pieces was over $24,000. He paid cash and I set up delivery for 6 weeks later because the furniture had to be made at the manufacturer. 3 weeks later he was cut by the team. I called when the order came in and he said, "Oh, I'm in the Caribbean now. Think I'm selling that house. Think I'm going to retire. You like the furniture?" Me, "Yeah." Him, "You can have it. Thanks for being a fan." 14 years later, and I still have that furniture and the fanciest patio setup in my middle class neighborhood. I had a roommate in the dorms who grabbed a roll of paper towels and used the whole thing still rolled up to sop up a spilled beer. That still pisses me off. Quirky 1. I have a regular day job, but I also teach English as a second language to Gulf nationals, in particular Saudi families. I receive a lot of gifts, but one boy I tutored came from a family who owned some of the most expensive racing camels in the Gulf. The father buys and sells these animals that are over 6 figures. When the son graduated, the father allowed me to choose a camel that would be mine and designated as not for sale. I have a racing camel in Saudi Arabia that lives probably in better conditions than I do. David Tepper, billionaire hedge fund manager that moved out of New Jersey. Doing this caused New Jersey to have redo their entire state budget. Mansa Musa spent and gave away so much gold during his pilgrimage to Mecca, he caused an economic disaster in the Mediterranean due to the resulting inflation. Private banker for a wealth management firm checking in. So as you'd imagine I've seen quite a bit and have a few tales I could tell. Most memorable was a foreign national who was purchasing a private jet in America. He was insanely reckless with his spending, but I'm going to be honest, this guy was so sickeningly wealthy he probably couldn't spend all his money if he tried, and boy did he try. Past tense as he's a former client. He saw that a Saudi prince had installed an all-gold bathroom on his private A380. For those of you who don't know, that's the largest commercial passenger airplane in operation. This guy wanted to imitate that on his more modest $34 million jet. Only problem is he wanted the bathroom installed in a 2-week time frame as he was entertaining his father on board the plane. The company doing it failed to source all the gold required in time and the sink would be left plain. Rather than take his father in an unfinished bathroom, he sourced another jet that already had this feature. God knows how he found it, and spent another $40 million to buy this new jet in time to impress his old man. 2 jets in the space of a month. Standard disclaimer, this wasn't my client directly, but the firm's biggest client at the time. I used to be a nanny to celebrities and high-profile New York financial families. Some highlights. The CEO and his model wife of a famous athletic wear company paid for an entire wardrobe for me to keep at their home because they didn't want outside clothes contaminating their house or infant. I was to take my street clothes into the bathroom near the entrance, take them off, change into my house clothing, and then only change back after I was finished with the baby for the day and was getting ready to leave. They also had a safe of cash that I was to use exclusively for my meals, drinks and takeout food, and then leave the receipts in the safe. The famous fashion designer who paid for a wardrobe for me to wear in the house that was entirely black and white, so I would match the home decor. Didn't matter what brands of clothing, but everything had to be pure black or white, no patterns or other colors. This included accessories, sneakers and socks. The family who flew me to Antigua from Manhattan for a long weekend to watch their 3 kids because the parents wanted to relax. They had a private island compound near a famous male celebrity, and the island only was accessible by private plane or private yacht. The CEO of an international firm that was married with 4 children and each child had their own nanny. I was the nanny to the infant, and the couple paid for apartments in Paris and Manhattan for each of us nannies. The family spent 6 months in Paris and 6 months in New York every year. The 20-something-year-old gentleman from a millionaire family who owned a penthouse on Park Avenue, and I was hired to work as his housekeeper after he broke his leg in a skiing accident and needed help with daily upkeep and cleaning. When his clothes needed to be washed or the dishes cleaned, instead of me cleaning them, I was instructed to throw them away and take the credit cards and just buy new ones. I was yelled at because I didn't spend enough on the dishes. Working birthday parties for young children of the elite, I've seen entire hotels, stadiums, professional sports training facilities like equestrian and gymnastics places completely rented for an entire day just for a toddler party. A depressing one was interviewed for a nanny position for 2 sweet twin girls about 8 years old. The previous nanny interviewed me, and I was puzzled and asked where the parents were. The parents lived in Europe, the twins lived in a mansion in New York. As the nanny, I would have access to all bank accounts and credit cards, and basically raise them in the mansion, and take them to school, appointments, sports, etc. I would have my own black Amex. This was around 2004, and my own floor of the home. I would call the parents in Europe if there were any major issues. This is how the girls had been living for years. No idea if they ever saw their parents. I have a lot more stories, but these are just what come to mind. My ex's dad's semi-daily driver was an Aston Martin Vanquish. They lived in a multi-million-dollar home, rented entire home/condos around the world for multiple family vacations each year, and my ex's private high school tuition cost double what my college tuition cost. His parents paid out of pocket for he and his 2 siblings to go to very expensive colleges. He had multiple trust funds and investments, and they were perfectly wonderful people, all of them. Very family oriented, very kind, as generous as they were wealthy. They endowed scholarships, worked hard, gave great advice, gave to charity, and were always attempting to learn and observe the world around them, and changing their views accordingly. Great family. Saddest part of the breakup for me was breaking up with the rest of the family, tbh.